And next is our board spotlight and with Skills USA presentation. So I'll call Ms. Coggins up.
Chairwoman Hammond, board members, Dr. Melton, good evening.
Good evening.
Each year, School District 5 students in the Skills USA chapter at the Center for Advanced Technical Studies shine in competition, putting their talents and skill on display in their many areas of study. Recently, the school earned a National Model of Excellence Award with a plaque arriving last month. On Friday, the Skills USA chapter shared and dedicated the award to the district by presenting it to our superintendent, Dr. Melton. And it is on display for the public and the board to view at the front of the room as a token of gratitude to the entire District 5 community. The motto of the district's Skills USA chapter is "Do Great, One Day at a Time." And tonight, we would like to show you a video that highlights the great things that our students and staff in this organization do each day in School District 5. Let's take a look.
Skills USA is a national career and technical student organization that partners students, teachers, and industry personnel.
Skills USA is more than a student organization. It is the foundation for a lifetime of success. Through community engagement, we learn the importance of selfless service to others. Through personal, professional, and leadership development, we become better versions of ourselves before we start our careers. Our teachers are providing us with the technical skills needed for the professions we wish to enter. Our industry partners are providing us with unparalleled opportunities, means, and support. State and national competitions reinforce what our amazing teachers have taught us, and as we move through our lives, whether it be college or our careers, we will be ready.
Last year, we stood before the board and told you about our accomplishments and our goals, one of our goals being to become the top chapter in South Carolina. Not only did we become the top chapter in the state, but we went on to become a national model of excellence, meaning that we were one of the top 24 chapters in the nation.
Despite having to adapt to all the changes this year, we have used our successes as motivation to become even stronger. This year, our chapter grew over to 360 members. Through student-led industry panels, state conferences, and national training, all of our students have had the opportunity to go into leadership and professional training experience.
Community engagement is essential to our chapter. This year has created so many new opportunities and partnerships. Recently, we donated 450 meals towards the Ronald McDonald House and over $1,000 in goods from our virtual toy drive for the Prisma Health Children's Hospital. You may have noticed that Broad River Road in front of Spring Hill High and Chapin Middle and beside the center have looked a lot cleaner. That's all thanks to our beautiful people that come out on their Saturday mornings to keep our roads clean through the Adopt a Highway program.
Our expectations for this year are the same as they are every year. We do this through our chapter motto, "Do great, one good day at a time." If we all do this, our goals are achievable. Skills USA is more than a student organization. For us, it's a lifestyle.
We are making a difference.
We are career ready.
We are America's future workforce.
We are Skills USA.
And as an additional point of pride, we'd like to point out that the video was produced by students in our media technology course at the Center for Advanced Technical Studies. Students, if you're watching tonight, we want to say congratulations. We are proud of the work that you do. And that concludes our spotlights for this evening.
Thank you. We are so proud of that group. The superintendent's, superintendent's report, action if necessary. Dr. Melton.
Thank you, Chair Hammond. I'd like to make sure everyone's attention is drawn here in front of Chair Hammond is the plaque that our students received at the center. And my congratulations to them, and of course the National Advisor of the Year, Mr. Chapman, for his continued leadership. It was a delightful experience to get to go and see students and see how they represent each of our 4 high schools at one place, learning together, practicing new skills. Before I jump into reentry, I'd like to pause. March is the month of social school workers, School Workers Appreciation Month, and I think we could all agree that the entire year of this academic year has challenged our staff in so many ways. Our social workers are always a critical part of our success, but this year has looked even more so differently. And thanks to them and their care for our students and their connections with resources, our children and families are being supported, and our children are finding partnerships in the community and the things that they need for their success. So school workers, social workers, we appreciate you, and we hope that the whole month of March you are celebrated for your contributions to District 5. If we could pause for a moment of applause for our social workers, please, in School District 5. Dr. Harris, of course, your supervision of our social workers, we appreciate your support of them and the visionary efforts that you and your team have had to make sure that our students are at the center. As we get into this evening for our reentry review, this is, of course, is report number 13, and you will note that there is a recommendation included in tonight's report. This slide is one you have seen since last summer of our guiding principles, so I won't pause to share those details again. Our phases of reentry is a point of note. We are in week number 6 of 5 days of on-site face-to-face instruction. Of course, our 5 model continues to thrive. Looking towards operations, you are aware of the metrics that we're using to make decisions in School District 5 and to monitor, and always with an emphasis of that underlying safety concern of priority 5, of the wellness of our staff, of students, also socially, physically, and emotionally. Dr. Harris is going to come this evening to offer an update and recommendation regarding our reentry of hardship request. Of course, we are starting to settle out, but Dr. Harris has a report and also some recommendations. Dr. Harris, Chief of Planning and Administration.
Thank you, Dr. Melton, members of the board, and to our general community. I'm happy to share with you, just by way of a very brief update, regarding our recommendation that pertains to reentry hardship request. And I'd like to begin by simply sharing a model or information that you may very well be familiar with from earlier in our year. This is really a review of a process in which we've undertaken since early in the year, and it's the collective efforts of several departments led by our instruction department and our chief of instruction, Mr. Juliana, who instituted this model for us in District 5. It's interesting, as I wrote over tonight, that tonight marks the 6th month in which we've been in school. We began school September 8th, tonight is March 8th, and interesting that we are here tonight to have this conversation. Just kind of walk very briefly to what we have presented to you. This is an instructional model regarding a request for changes, and there was a window of opportunity for elementary students, K through 5, as well as secondary students. And as you can see, that began with a window that opened on October 5th and closed on October 16th for elementary, and the same follows suit with our secondary students. November 9th, it opened and closed on November 20th. As is an acceptance an opportunity to apply, there's also an acceptance opportunity as well. So that window for elementary students was on or before November 5th, Thursday, November 5th, 2020, and for secondary, it was parents were notified by Wednesday, January 27th, 2021, the acceptance process. Following that was an implementation process for the instructional model changes, and at the elementary level, again, K through 5, that began on the second quarter, the start of the second quarter, which was November the 12th of 2020, followed by our secondary students who began their changes and implementation of model changes on Wednesday, February 3rd, which was the start of our second semester. With all of that in place, dating back even to close to shortly after our start of school, the hardship process, and we've talked many times here in board meetings about the hardship process, that has been underway and has occurred throughout. And interestingly, this past week, as I shared in the executive staff, that we've had a fewer number of requests for changes this past week, the past couple of days. So we are here to offer an opportunity to kind of shift our focus in a sense. We want to ensure the success of our students in order to stabilize our classrooms, be they virtual classrooms in 5 or face-to-face in-person classrooms, and certainly to preserve, we would say, the sanity of our teachers and our school counselors and many of our administrators. We come before you with a recommendation to suspend our reentry hardship request for the balance of the year, and so that we can stabilize our classrooms and again ensure the success of our students. And I will say that barring anything such as a family court, legal matters, barring anything of that nature, there are extreme kinds of cases. It's a general rule of thumb. That is our recommendation to suspend reentry hardships at this particular time. With that in place, I'll turn the microphone over to Mr. Biedenbaugh.
As we make that transition, we know there'll be some questions regarding that recommendation. We certainly come back to that. As Mr. Biedenbaugh makes his way to the podium, board members, you received an update on this portion of the slideshow this afternoon. We did have a breaking news report that led to an update of a new partnership. Mr. Biedenbaugh.
Thank you, Dr. Melton, Chairwoman Hammond, and board members. It is my privilege to announce that District 5 has been working with MUSC Health for the last week and tonight, and I wanted to provide you a quick update about our vaccination plan. As you all know, 1B started last week and actually started today, according to the press release. We know it's a very important process for our staff members to get vaccinated. So, as the slide says, we had originally planned to work with MUSC. They are our back-to-business partner with MUSC Health, and they've helped us do evaluations of our schools to make sure we have safe schools. They provided us with training for our principals. They provided training for our nurses to improve the safety in our schools. We have decided to have a one-day vaccination in order to have less disruption for our students and our staff. And MUSC was going to do that, and they were going to work with our staff members to implement this. And we plan to utilize e-learning days. However, as Dr. Melton indicated, we have some new news that helps District 5. It is my privilege to announce that we will be partnering with Lexington Medical Center. They will allow us to get vaccinations sooner for our staff in District 5. So we worked with them this morning to get this. They have agreed to have 2 days, as you can see, Friday, March the 26th, and then a second dose will be on Friday, April the 16th. They are committed to coming out, doing training for our nurses. We will do a 2 or 3 day before the site, review the site, and provide us with all the information we need. They will train our nurses on giving shots to our staff, and this will allow less disruption. So we're excited to work with Lexington Medical Center. We're glad that they could get to us faster, I guess is a better word, to allow this. So we will be planning to implement e-learning days, and I'm going to ask Mr. Giuliano to come up and talk about e-learning.
So we have two types of e-learning that we can implement. We have the asynchronous and we also have the synchronous e-learning days. We are actually going to implement on March 26th and April 16th the asynchronous, which will be recorded lessons and assignments posted for pre-K through 12th grade. So pre-K through second grade would be through Seesaw, which is the mode that they use, and then Google Classroom for 3rd through 12th grade, where those recorded lessons and the assignments would be posted for students. And we're also going to be able to give students a chance to download those lessons in advance as well to their Chromebooks before they go home on that March 26th date. So we're going with the asynchronous so we can make sure that our teachers and our staff have the opportunity to be able to leave to receive their vaccinations. We're going to continue to have more information that's going to be shared with families and shared with our teachers and our staff in the very near future. So there's plenty of time to be prepared for those 2 days. I'm going to take it back to Mr. Biedenbaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Giuliano. We are very excited about our vaccination plan. We want to thank MUSC Health for what they have done to help get us ready for this, but we now want to know that we are partnership with our vaccination with Lexington Medical Center. Our communication team has shared the vaccination dates with our staff this afternoon, so they are aware about the process. It went out later, and so hopefully everyone will be excited to know we have dates and we will be able to give the vaccinations On Wednesday, we will plan to visit Lexington Medical Center to go over all of the final details, to see some of their processes, and our nursing supervisor will be joining me along with our communications team. Our communication will plan to do another video about the process and share it with our staff. Thank you, Dr. Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Beanbo. For our staff that may be listening this evening, they, of course, have in their inbox an update from Ms. Goggins and our communication team to include a video to support our priority 4 of internal communication. Ms. Hammond, when this report was drafted and sent with board packet to the board, our emphasis was on reentry, but of course with the change today to include the e-learning dates, when we developed this content last week, we did not have dates on the calendar, but obviously now with the slide that you see that was included here, we do have those recommendations as far as days that we can shift to e-learning, which of course will be a first for School District 5. We were approved this year by the Education Oversight Committee to be an e-learning district, but we've not used those days, so this is going to give us an opportunity for our students to experience, our families, but also our staff to have an e-learning experience. Ms. Hammond, that completes the report, but I suspect there's questions that we can answer from the board.
I had cut that off. I know I want to hear from anyone that has questions, and we'll just be sure we get everyone heard from questions. Mr. Lovis?
I just wondered if that we needed to make a motion to basically reaffirm the administration's plan to suspend the reentry hardship request for the school year. Is that necessary, or?
Yes, probably. I think I wrote suspend the hardship request unless an extreme case. Did that sound right? If you want to prepare a motion for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Extreme case.
Add extremes case.
Okay,
because
so-
I think that was smart to put that in there, Dr. Harris. It could be a medical or a, and I think we need to leave it open for something extreme, and that'll be up to you to decide, Dr. Milton.
Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead with that.
Well, I was going to say that I want to get to everybody. You want to start with Ms. Hines?
Yes. I have a question about once we start implementing, or once we have the vaccination dates and teachers are vaccinated, and I know some teachers have already started receiving vaccinations. I guess it's a two-part question. Are we keeping track of the teachers that have received vaccinations? And once teachers are vaccinated, how does that impact the quarantine protocol for teachers?
Yes, ma'am. That certainly impacts. Mr. Beanbo, I see at the microphone. Dr. Turner may would like to weigh in from a human resources perspective as well. Mr. Beanbo, based upon the conversations with our partners thus far, would you speak to the 2 questions that Ms. Blackburn-Hines has posed?
Yes, ma'am. We will have some staff members, I didn't say this earlier, we will have some staff members that go ahead and get the vaccination early, and that's okay. The portal was opened up for them today, for them with Lexington Medical Center, so they can sign up and get the vaccination now. So that makes it easier for them, and we're encouraging them to do that if they choose to. If we have the 2, and from my understanding, after you get both vaccinations, you will not have to quarantine. So that helps that process as well. So we will be in a better shape as far as quarantining teachers go after that.
So when it comes to that, Mr. Beanbo, Dr. Turner, from an HR perspective, if there is a situation where we contact a staff member that would warrant a quarantine, the staff member would then, how would that staff member respond to make sure that they were to share their information? Because, of course, the health record is confidential information for our employees as well as our students. How, from an HR lens, would you navigate those new waters, Dr. Turner?
We're working closely with our nursing staff to ensure that the protocols and practices we have in place will not violate any type of confidentiality. So we're trying to be very protective and respectful of our choices regarding the vaccine. So nurses will lead those conversations on an as-needed basis versus us having a full tracker on who completed the vaccine or not. And we feel like that's the most protective stance for the district and employees.
Okay. Mr. Hogan, do you have any questions? I'm going to go down. You don't? All right, Ms. Gardner.
I've had a lot of questions about the quarantining, and once we get, the teachers who would like to be vaccinated, would we be able to not be as strict with our quarantining measures with the students, because it is extreme in most people's opinion, including quite a few of the nurses. They feel that it might be too extreme because this is just my own observation. I don't know anybody who's gotten it at school. I know lots of children and adults who have gotten COVID, but none of them got it at school. So I feel like we're doing a good job, but we're quarantining to an extreme, in my opinion. So,
Ms. Gardner, I suspect there is quarantine fatigue for our families and our staff in many situations. Dr. Harris, if you'll come to the microphone, this actually was a topic that we revisited again last week with our reentry team to include Nurse Stanek. And at that time, Dr. Harris and Nurse Stanek had worked through some recommendations. The board, of course, has seen some presentations from other districts in the state at a conference recently, and we took in that content, and then we also reached out to some neighbors. So, Dr. Harris, when the vaccine is administered to staff that choose to take it, what might our quarantining look like for our students to follow?
Surely, once the vaccination is out, we will significantly be able to minimize or lessen the degree of quarantines at that particular time. One of the questions that you raised about staff, we know that following the second dose of that, there's about a 90-day period in which you're basically safe to not have to quarantine. That becomes effective 2 weeks after the second dose, so we do know that as well. So again, that will contribute to the lessening the number of quarantines also. But as we, based on our current practices, and we feel very good about this as we discuss it in reentry, many of our schools, overwhelming majority of our schools are doing the kind of mitigating strategies that have cluster students in where for easy identification if there need to be. And so I think with all of what we have in place and continue with what we have by way of the MUSC, we will see far fewer students and staff being quarantined. I can report to you today that in talking with our nurse that I think as of today on our dashboard, you perhaps will reflect at least maybe one case. So you nod your head, so I appreciate you having a chance to look at that. One case today that was reported of a student. And so that is eons from what we've known in prior days. So I think where we are and the trajectory that we're currently on is certainly in the right direction. And so look forward to a continuance of that.
Yep. Ms. Huddle.
I didn't really have a question about any of the particular things. I just had a more general question under the heading of Superintendent's report. And I just wanted to ask Dr. Milton if there was any topic or item that you wanted to bring to us that you haven't felt like you could so far, or, are we addressing the things that you want us to be addressing?
Ms. Huddle, I appreciate that. It's hard to imagine it's been 8 months, Dr. Harris, because did you say 6 months or 8 months? 6 months. This year has been tremendous experience. And the staff, we've been so focused on COVID operations, decision-making, having to pivot with changing information. So I'm pleased at this point of how we've been able to navigate some consistent rhythms of District 5, of choice and other kinds of processes. I don't know that we have given the opportunity for new introduction of information, which is my choosing to wait. I'll use an example. I've talked with board members separately about strategic planning and the interest of the board and where we are with that, and executive staff has discussed that this morning, of when is the right time to do it well versus the time to do it as a task. And so I do think what I've brought to the board that has been timely has been sometimes late information because of where we are with operations and new information. I'll give an example. This afternoon I sent a text message to the board and said, you got a new presentation in your inbox. That isn't fair for you to have that short notification, but that's just how quickly some things are changing that we can give the opportunity. But I have found this board has given the opportunity to create the space of things that we need. As we look ahead to the agenda this evening, you're going to see some things that we know that we needed to have for conversational purposes, and we are prepared to say what is needed right now versus what may be able to wait to another time if necessary. But I do believe that this board has heard the needs that we've had, and I do think that the needs have been so great that think of how much time we spent as an estimation on reentry alone. And that has been a huge time commitment of the board and, of course, for the staff. that I appreciate the time that you all have given to that. As we look ahead, we're drafting to see what new content we can prepare for, hoping that we can shift back to a more sense of normalcy to get back into the rhythm of the typical calendar of operations for School District 5. But I appreciate the question.
Thank you, Dr. Milton. I had a couple of questions. I'm just curious on our, and I certainly understand as a teacher because we've had them come back and forth and it's hard on the whole curriculum for the teacher and catching those up, and they're at a different place if they come from virtual to your classroom. Yes, but I'm just curious in numbers. Have we had more requests to come from virtual to face-to-face, or have we had more face-to-face wanting to come back to virtual? It's just for my understanding.
Sure. I don't know if Dr. Harris has that number that he could share with confidence today, but I think we've seen a trend of it nearly balanced out for quite some time. Dr. Harris did update me this morning that it has slowed significantly. Knowing that this is our 6th week of 5 days of face-to-face as an offering, I think that has really gotten us more of settled into choices at this point. Dr. Harris, anything you'd like to add that maybe I have omitted from that report as far as how you'd respond to that question?
And Dr. Harris, I really want to say that I'm so glad you've brought this point to us because for the sake of the student, as much as the sake of the teacher, it's more of I see the student losing out going back and forth. I really do. So the continuity is key.
You're absolutely right, Chairman Hammond, and certainly well said. We are concerned about the overall success of our students. Mm-hmm. But equally as important, we are concerned about the well-being and the welfare of our teaching staff. And if I can just take this moment to say that we have heard them, and they have communicated with us, and we certainly do understand, and we have walked the walk with them. And I do think that this is one way in which we can say to them, we've heard and we've seen, and we certainly honor the work that they do. To your question, as we have progressed over the year, Dr. Milton is spot on. The pendulum has swung from one end to the other. And at this point now that we are demonstrating success and more success as the weeks go on with face-to-face, in-person instruction, the pendulum is swinging back toward, hey, I want to sign me up for in-person. So there are requests to move from 5 back to in-person. That was not always the case. So it's just about, I don't have the numbers, you're right, but it's just about a fairly equal balance depending on the season that we're in the district.
Thank you. And my other one, I understand e-learning, but I thought for the audience and for those that are not teachers, the March 26th and the April 16th, the 2 days that we're going to do the e-learning, will the teachers even they'll be at home too? And that the way, I mean, that's the way that at least when we do e-learning in too. And that way, I'd like for maybe Dr. G to explain, I think that's very considerate of teachers. I know there are people that are not happy with 2 more days of e-learning because the face-to-face is so much better. But I wanted you to share your reasoning. And I think I know the answer, but I'd like the public to hear the answer.
We always appreciate the opportunity, Ms. Hammond. And Mr. Giuliano, I'll ask that you weigh in on that. And it's important for me to pause to insert, we're student-centered and staff-supportive. So what Dr. Harris has just described, we have heard from our staff the need to settle and keep students from moving, but also we need our students and families to understand if we see that a student's not being successful in their current model, we are making sure there's a support system in place that family is supported and that student has expectations because we expect learning to occur. Our teachers are teaching, our students are learning, and we expect engagement and success. When it comes to, well, why e-learning for these days when others may be given an hour or 2 hours? We don't know of side effects that our staff may have. We are already using, and I'll go back to something Ms. Gardner referenced earlier with quarantines. With the number of quarantines that our staff have experienced, the lead that they've taken, this is one opportunity for us to show our staff, and you all have heard me say this before, this is recruitment season, but every decision is retention season. This is one retention effort for our staff to see that their health and well-being matters to us. So it's going to give us an opportunity. Gives us an opportunity to practice e-learning. So with e-learning, Mr. Giuliano will share what this will look like, but we are preparing communications to release in a timely way that families understand what it's going to look like on the user side as a student lens. And we're preparing our staff what it looks like on our expectations. We sent a video this afternoon where I said to the staff, You'll be getting expectations from your direct supervisor so that you know what's expected of you. Mr. Giuliano.
So, Ms. Hammond, to answer your question too, is we're exploring all staff because we do have some staff members that may need to be in the building for that particular day. You may have some custodial staff that need to clean the facilities, some cafeteria staff that need, so it's going to vary depending on the staff of whether or not they would be in the building. So we'll be making those decisions and having conversations with teachers and staff so they know their particular responsibilities those days.
Good.
As we get closer to the 26th, we'll have an update for the board as to what that may look like, but our staff will be clearly communicated with what they could expect of themselves.
And Dr. Milton, on the Lexington Medical Center, is that going to be like we're doing in Lexington too, where they can make their appointments even if it's after school and go? Or, I mean, I just thought I want teachers to see that this has given them another venue and expanded it, in my mind. If I'm right, I don't want to be wrong.
Mr. Bimbo has worked throughout the weekend on this. So, Mr. Bimbo, as far as what our staff is currently made available, and tomorrow we have communications planned to go out to our staff after today's video. We make videos very efficiently, thanks to Ms. Goggins and team. So one video went out today, and Mr. Bimbo and I were in that, and then we have next communications for our staff. So, Mr. B, from your perspective, what does it look like in regards to Lexington Medical's partnership?
Yes, ma'am. So we'll have the 2 vaccination days, one for the first dose, one for the second dose. So that will be those 2 days for e-learning. Staff can sign up after hours if they choose to, or on the weekend whenever they choose to go ahead and get their vaccination. So it's very similar to what's happening in Lexington too. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my school, I can tell you, had everybody that wanted it, got it by today.
That's fantastic.
So I know we can do it too. Thank you. I wanted teachers just to see that gave us a whole nother dimension.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
thank you. So it isn't just those 2 dates. That was the point I was.
If an employee has the availability
Right.
and the resources to get it sooner, we know that some are taking advantage of that. But for those that are awaiting the opportunity, that's something we're going to offer to our staff for their well-being. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Anything else from what we said? You have another question? No. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay,
If you would like to.
I'm getting to be the king of the run-on sentences here, but I make the motion to affirm the administration's plan to suspend reentry hardship requests for the remainder of the 2020-21 school year, with the exception of extreme hardship cases.
Is there a second? Second from Ms. Gardner. Any other discussion? All those in favor? 6 and 0 opposed. So hope that does what we need, Dr. Milton.